is the beginning of a really fruitful season. July tends to be when a lot of the vegetables start cropping, when a lot of the fruit and berries start ripening, and there is a lot to harvest in July in my garden. And there's especially a lot here in the Polycrub. And so today I'm going to pick what needs picking and see what we get in the end. And then we're going to go out also into the garden because there are plenty of vegetables out there that need picking and harvesting and taking inside to be preserved as well. First up are the pickling gherkins. And in last week's video, I shared various ways that you can preserve food from the garden. And I showed you some of my dill pickles, and there are so many more cucumbers on the go. And I'm tempted to make some sweet pickles as well, because we do enjoy eating those. And there are so many, from the little tiny ones that you could pick, or I'll pick one right now, I'll show you. These little tiny gherkins that you can preserve as mini pickling gherkins. You can wait till they're a little bit bigger, and then you can also get them quite large. And these make really big wedges of dill pickles, which I quite enjoy. There are some other cucumbers in here as well. So let's have a look to see what we've got back behind me. Next door to the pickling gherkins are some beets, and incredibly, these are ones that are supposed to be mini cucumbers. These are F1 babies, and if you leave them too long on the stem, this is what happens. But we've been just eating these as salad, quite large salad cucumbers, and they haven't been bitter at all. So that has been a real bonus. But I'm gonna pick these off, and also the ones that are down here as well. There are so many cucumbers. I feel like I'm in a jungle now. There are so many plants in here. And most of the crops inside the Polycrub are tomatoes, but I don't think that any are ripe yet. There are a couple that are starting to ripen up, like this tigerella over here, starting to get a little bit of color, but there are masses and masses of green tomatoes. And so in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be very busy with harvesting them. But in the meantime, there are other things in here, like the aubergines, the eggplants, and there are quite a few down here. It's a good one there. And there's another biggie just below it. And again, there are even more starting to form up above. Those are quite large, actually. And there's even more. More towards the top of the plants, you'll see flowers, so those purple flowers, and then also young fruits. But the fruits start ripening down at the bottom first, and there are a couple of good sized ones down here, and also a couple of medium sized ones here, decent size, big enough to pick. More young ones in there, so we're going to have quite a few over the coming month or so, maybe longer. This plant here doesn't have any just yet. There's just flowers, and I think there's a small fruit over on this side. This is Matoyo. This is the only one that I have here. The rest of these are called Moneymaker, and they are certainly living up to their name because they have just been amazing at producing fruit. Just spotted a flash of color in here amongst all the green, and check it out, the first 2 ripe tomatoes of the year. This is a type called Galena, obviously a cherry type, and these are not going to make it inside the house. Alongside the aubergines and the tomatoes and the cucumbers and so much more, I've also planted quite a few chili and pepper plants. And this one down here is one of the Chinese space chilies, Hangi Zhao 8. And what I've found is that the plant is relatively small, but it produces quite large peppers on it, just incredibly large compared to the plant. And also a lot of them, and they're often a really weird shape. So this one doesn't look too weird, but I've got one over here that's a bit more of a spiral. These are the space chilies that I've just harvested, and I've come back down towards the middle because there is a padron chili here. And these are the ones that every 10th one can be quite spicy. And so far we've had just mild ones, but we've got a few here. One of these could be the one. Let's get these picked as well. Gorgeous. I'm honestly not used to having this many warm weather crops. This is the first year I've grown inside a polytunnel, well, a polycrub. And up until now, I've just had a small greenhouse, which is enough space to grow some tomatoes and some other types of plants, but it's not really huge amounts. And so this is definitely making a difference. And having all of these peppers, this is new to me as well. Usually I just have one plant and just get a couple of fruit off of it, just enjoy it for what it is. But this is amazing. I'm so pleased with growing under cover. The Isle of Man is quite a temperate climate, and it really isn't that warm enough outside to grow a lot of things. And so I've stuffed this polycrub with lots of crops that I've always wanted to grow, including sweet potatoes. There's just 2 plants in here and they are going mad. There's also melons at the back, and the first melon is starting to form. There are plenty of little tiny ones that are just starting to form up from flowers. And there's also 2 butternut squash plants over here as well, and they are getting ginormous. Now, out in the main garden, there are a few things to harvest as well. So more crops that are better for temperate climates, rainy climates. I've got lots of leafy greens out there, but also courgettes, zucchini. Oh no. Maggie. Down here on the end of this bed, I have 2 courgette plants, zucchini for if you're in North America. And then on the other side of the bean wigwam, there is another one, and all 3 of them are different. This one is a bowl type courgette, and they're not quite ready. This one here is a standard green courgette, and there are some that I'm going to pick right now. And then on the other side, that is a really interesting one called Zephyr, and it's half green and half yellow. Really beautiful. Now the ones that are here, they're a bit swollen. I think it's from not too much water and then a little bit too much. So I want to get these picked and used so that the smaller ones underneath can continue developing. Right, you see this one. It's quite bulbous at the base. You can see that there. And then quite narrow here. So it's not the perfect courgette, but it's fine. When you grow your own, you eat all the ugly ones too. And there are a couple more here as well, which we won't be able to get through, but I freeze courgettes as well. We use them pretty much every week. And what I do is I grate them up and then I pack them into cups, so measuring cups, and then upend the cups on wax paper or greaseproof paper on a baking tray. And then I put them in the freezer and then freeze them into pucks that are 1 cup sized. And that way I know exactly how much courgette I have in those pucks that I'll then store in freezer bags. And it's great, it's super easy. And as I said, we use them throughout the year. With the kohlrabi, I'm just going to cut it off at the base and then just cut the leaves off. Just go straight in the compost. And then the root, which is succulent and cabbagey flavored, You can roast it. So these bigger ones are better for roasting. You can even eat the younger ones raw. They're very crunchy, very succulent. They get woodier as they get bigger, but this is perfectly edible. I chop it up into pieces and then throw it in the oven with some olive oil. Really, really nice vegetable. And I have even more growing as seedlings inside the house right now. It's been too hot to start the seeds off in the greenhouse, but they're coming along in the dining room, and I will grow them again as an autumn or late summer, early autumn crop. Gorgeous. I'm just hunting out the best beetroot to pull up for dinner. We are going to have a beetroot salad, so I grate it up and then put a dressing on it. And there are yellow beetroot in here. There's some red ones as well, and then the Chioggia, so the striped ones, which are not as good, I would say, for this purpose. They're better for if you are going to be making pickled beetroot. So finding the right color is going to be important for what you're making, and that one is perfect. This is a gorgeous red one, a nice red beetroot for dinner, and I think I'll get another one as well. And beetroot grows so well in our climate all through the summer. Even though it's been quite hot, they've been doing okay in this bed. Although I can't find another red one. Here's another one. This one's a little bit smaller, but it will do. Gently pull it out. And we eat the greens as well. They're just like chard, really earthy though. There are quite a few other things that I could be picking today, but I'm going to hold off on most of them because I have a good amount to sort and cook and preserve right now, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. I could be cutting some cabbage. There are lots of lettuces that some of them are starting to go over. I also have different types of onions, Welsh onions, Egyptian onions, spring onions that I could be using. Of course, chard as a leafy green, and there are other things as well. It's just a little bit like grocery shopping out here. There's a little bit of something edible here and there and everywhere. The snap peas, the sugar snap peas, they're coming to the end, and there are quite a few sugar snap peas still on them, and I will be picking those as well, and then taking the plants out and preparing that ground for something else. But the last thing that I do want to pick is a bouquet of sweet peas. And sweet peas grow really well in my climate, and they smell incredible. And they have relatively straight stems, and some of them can get quite long, and they make really nice bouquets. They don't last very long, but when they do, they just fill a room with fragrance. Now, if you're growing sweet peas, they will form little pods eventually, which you can save the seeds of. Don't be tempted to eat them though, because they are not edible, they're toxic. Even though they look like an edible pea, don't eat them. But the flowers you can enjoy, and they're certainly not toxic to smell. Oh, just amazing. And so much the epitome of the cottage garden style. You'll also notice that they're growing on the willow wigwam that I showed you how to weave over the winter. And they look absolutely beautiful in my opinion. And there's another wigwam just over there with mashua growing on it. And they are something that you definitely want to check out making for your own garden, especially if you have a little bit of room to grow your own basket willow. All in all, this is a pretty big harvest, and I even cut some of the flowering sprouts off of a cabbage, and you can eat these, and as long as they're flexible and succulent, you can have them pretty much just like sprouting broccoli. Very tasty. Now, in addition, we have the gherkins, we've got cucumbers, We've got aubergines, peppers, courgettes, beetroot, kohlrabi. What am I going to do with all of this? Well, we're going to be eating some of it fresh, but most of this I'm going to be preserving. And I go through 7 ways that I preserve food for later on, so whether it's going to be in a couple of months or over the winter, in a video. And if you are facing some gluts of your own, and I'm sure you are, you might want to check out some of those ways that you can preserve as well. Thank you for coming along with me on this harvesting video. Look at this. This is amazing. This is what it is all about. And I will see you next week for another video here in the home garden, and we're going to go through what's been happening here, what I'm taking out, what I'm replanting, and we're also working on a new flower bed. I'll see you then.